Morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Martin Luplo. I'm head of production here at the Commonwealth Group, and I'm here to briefly go over who we are. I know a lot of you probably already know who we are, but for some of y'all that don't, it's going to give you a brief overview and then hand it off to our Encompass admin team so we can get started on the webinar, which is why you guys are here today. But I'm sharing my screen now just as a brief overview of the Commonwealth Group. We're a fulfillment services provider to mortgage lenders, and we also provide consulting to mortgage lenders as well. A couple of things that set us apart is everybody's here on shore. Our underwriting department doesn't have any minimum, so if you're trying to get ready for what is hopefully an increase in volume as rates hopefully drop this summer, as the items overseas are hopefully coming to an end and gas prices are going down, hopefully rates follow. And if you guys are planning on getting busy, like I know a lot of y'all out there are, we would love to assist with any increase in volume here. So I'm not going to go over everything here, but I'd say we're most known for our underwriting and processing, but we have a very exceptional QC and obviously Encompass admin as well. So please keep us in mind if you ever need anything. But with that, I'll introduce our Encompass admin team and let them take that away. On the call today, we've got Cody Thayer, who's kind of the project manager over there, keeps the trains on the tracks and making sure we're meeting all the deadlines that we need to meet. And then we also have Wesley Kinslow, who's our chief Encompass admin, and Kenny Pecoraro, who's his right-hand man. So with that, Kenny, would you like to give everybody an overview of the webinar today and kind of tell us what we're in store for?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, good morning. We have a lot of familiar faces in here, which is awesome. So good to see a good group of people out here today. And really, with the webinar today, there's a lot of potential really for everyone's business just with these web version workflows. We're going to learn a lot and see, how productive it is going to be for everyone's environment. Everyone's familiar with the Encompass built-in rules, and now they can be good, but they can have a little bit of trickiness to it, or sometimes they can be very straightforward. There's a lot of creativity with these web version triggers we're going to talk about today that I think everyone's going to be interested in if we haven't talked to you already about it. So without further ado, I will introduce Wesley. He is the senior Encompass admin here, and he has over 15 years of experience. And yeah, he's going to get us going.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So we're going to go over Encompass web workflows, web triggers, automations, all that jazz. So just a brief introduction of myself. A lot of you on the call already know me. Wesley Austin Kinslow, been doing the Encompass admin thing since 2009. Certified as long as they've had the ability to certify people. I've been with the Commonwealth Group for a few years as well. And I love solving problems. And one thing that web version settings let me do is solve problems, which is a great thing. So we're just going to have a brief rundown of what we're going to go over today. So first, we're going to look at Encompass Loan Locks, how Encompass Web interacts with the way loans get locked. We're not talking about like locking from like the secondary side. We're talking about how it locks people out of loans and how it's different in Encompass Web versus Encompass traditional desktop version. Over just the general innovations surrounding Encompass Web and what it can do for you. The prerequisites for realistic preparation for Encompass Web. So is kind of what's going to have to go into what steps you'll have to take to be able to get to make those changes meaningful. We're going to review task pipelines, which a lot of people are not really initiated with. Workflow tasks, which is a pretty broad subject, but we'll go over that in detail. And service and workflow automation, which I'm sure a lot of people are very interested in as well. So first, Encompass Loan Locks. How does Encompass behave whenever you're in Encompass Web versus Encompass Client? So the reason why I'm even putting this on this slide is because a lot of people don't really understand how that works, and this is more informational. when you are an Encompass web versus when you are an Encompass client, or when like a traditional SDK is interacting with Encompass, SDK being like a third-party program that's written to interact with Encompass. SDK stands for Software Developer Kit. But if you are a traditional Encompass client, whenever you sign into a loan at a loan level and you're working on it, you'll notice that when other people try to get into that same loan, it will pop up an error message and say you are completely locked out of this loan. It's read only. You can look at it, and that's about it. Yeah. So if you are in either when a loan's being edited in either Encompass Web or the desktop client, a lock is going to get placed on that loan file. But there are different kinds of locks, different levels of locks. So if you are logging in to a loan from the desktop client, your traditional executable, the method that most people use to get into Encompass, or if an SDK plugin is accessing that file, what's called an exclusive lock is placed on that file. That's what you're used to seeing. So if somebody else tries to get into that, it'll say this is locked out, it's read only. You can't really do a whole lot with it. That means that nothing else can really interact with that loan. APIs, any other kind of third-party services or whatever are not going to work in that case. That can cause some automated rules to fail. So some of the workflow automations that we're talking about might fail, at least temporarily, whenever if people are using the traditional client because of that exclusive lock. So this is really just kind of setting up one of the limitations to these automations. If you are insisting for a big part of your process to use traditional Encompass client, some of these automations will not be as seamless as it would be if you were to be exclusively on Encompass Web. If you are using the Encompass Web interface, which is it's very similar to a traditional Encompass client, looks way different, but it functions very similarly. That creates something called a shared lock, which is a lot more permissive than a traditional exclusive lock. So if you're using Encompass Web, the permissions that are kind of gelled whenever you're in that loan allow for other things to happen, like some automations can run, like automated services and things can run even though somebody is in that loan. Other third-party services and interactions, things like APIs can interact more favorably. So having said that, we're going to talk a little bit about hybridization of Encompass Web and Encompass Client, which means that some of your team might work on Encompass Web and some of them might work on Encompass Client. It's important to get the ideas of how this works out into the ether, because if some of these automations are expected, if we have like something like hey, this is supposed to automatically run a service, for example, and a lot of these workflow rules that we're talking about, whenever they're written, they will function in Encompass Web and Encompass Client both. But if you're an Encompass client, because of that exclusive lock, it's not going to feel as seamless. So if you're in a loan and a automation goes off, like one of these services that's automated, it will not work until after you've exited the loan file, for example. So that's something that I always bring up front, because it kind of helps understand the rest of what we're talking about. Okay. So some of the Encompass Web innovations: workflow rules, tasks, notifications and schedulers, enhanced conditions through Encompass Web, and automation of services and workflow. All right. So workflow rules are very similar to triggers, but the ways that you can trigger rules is vastly expanded. So in Encompass Client, you can trigger workflow rules pretty much only based on what's done at a loan level. So like, for example, if you say, hey, I want this to send an email to the people on our team 3 days before the proposed closing date. In traditional Encompass Client, that's not possible without something external, like something from Software Developer Kit or an API of some kind, something externally written that will run independently on a different calendar scheduler and work. But you can, using Encompass Web and Encompass Web Forms, or workflow tasks, you can create workflow rules that will automate something like that. So even if you're using traditional Encompass client, you can use Encompass Web to write rules that will work on a scheduler, for example. Schedulers are an incredible addition to Encompass. It's something that people have been begging for years. Effectively, what it does is at a certain stage of the loan, it says, hey, start the scheduler and keep running, looking for a future event, whether that be a specific event or when other data is entered or whatever you can pretty much imagine. It's pretty broad into how you can write these rules. But the important thing is it's something kind of external that doesn't require someone making changes at a loan level to be able to make some of these rules function like they did before. Automation of services and workflow, that's also a relatively new one and enabled by Encompass Web. The biggest thing to keep in mind when you are wanting to do that, we'll go to that in a minute. So why should we utilize Encompass Web? One of the original reasons why people were considering it was because of the device adaptation. So in Encompass Client, you're pretty much locked down to Windows. If you have to have Windows to make it work. If you're on a Mac, then that means you're running some kind of an emulator to emulate what Windows does. If you I've seen people try to either connect to a virtual machine, which is like a virtual Windows environment that is kind of cloud hosted and you connect up to through a tablet or whatever. And while that was possible, very clunky, lots of bugs, lots of inconsistencies, not ideal. But with Encompass Web, that is what this is designed for, is to allow you, if you are on a Linux system, if you are on a Mac, if you are on, on your phone, for example, you can still bring up Encompass Web, which is tremendous, especially for like very sales oriented part to your team that might need that flexibility and mobility. It's a more responsive framework because you're working with web-based forms. You're not loading a program. You have the flexibility of those web-based forms and their responsiveness. Going to go into the mood of that, but in general, it's going to be a more efficient responsiveness whenever you're interacting with forms. The sequence of work is more intuitive through workflow cards. So what that means is right now we have milestones in Encompass Client, and they work just fine. They say, hey, here's the stage of the loan that we're in, and there's a lot of things that are required at this stage. And here are a myriad of input forms that you can find this information. Some people have developed tremendous custom input forms that will step you through all these stages. And they work for that organization. Some people just have a Excel spreadsheet that's off to the side that they'd use as a checklist, or a traditional checklist that's just written down. Some people just have really experienced folks on their team that have all this in their head, which is not ideal whenever you're training new people or whenever you're trying to convey that to a third party. What this allows you to do is, instead of focusing on, hey, here's the general milestone we're at, you can instead say, hey, these are tasks that we have set up that are required at this milestone stage. You're still working at a milestone stage, but instead it's more task focused, right? A lot of the another reason why you might want to utilize Encompass Web, a lot of the Encompass updates that have happened recently seem to be web focused. This is kind of your bells and whistles. Obviously, like compliance related changes and industry changes, Encompass Client has been updated for those as well. But a lot of the like quality of life updates and UI improvements and things, it seems like that ICE has focused a lot of their updates on Encompass Web. So if you want the new shiny, it seems like most of those improvements seem to go toward that effort, which makes a lot of sense because it's from their perspective, the development of that is just kind of the future for them. It's not that they're trying not to stay in the past. There is a section for opportunities options. This is more focused on your sales staff. A lot of folks have tried to create some kind of a sandbox experience in Encompass, which is kind of like, hey, this is our loan. We're going to tinker with it and see what would this look like as a VA loan, or see what this would look like in other situations. Opportunities through Encompass Web allows for a user to play with different scenarios, different opportunities for borrowers without altering the loans, and that includes pricing. That includes everything that you would see at the preliminary, like the pre-qual level. It gives you that expansiveness depending on which opportunities are set up. So when a lot of people say, hey, I wish we had a sandbox for our loan officers, opportunities through Encompass Web might provide that. And a lot of people have not really looked into it, but it's something that could get you there. Some prerequisites for realistic preparation for Encompass Web. Your organizational workflow is key. So if you are disorganized into how your procedural stages are working, that's something you're gonna want to tie down first. If it's kind of a, hey, whoever gets to this first, without really focusing on the role of who's responsible for what, and it's not really done in a consistent procedural order, it's going to be a lot harder to organize something like workflow tasks. I have your technology is great, but have you tried organization? So it's technology is the tool, right? But you still have to have knowledge and planning to make that tool work the way you want it to. So your operational workflow is going to be more on a role by role basis instead of a generality. Instead of focusing on the loan stages, these Encompass Web workflows are looking more specifically at the role and the procedural order. So even though milestones do work effectively like an assembly line, this is more role focused, and it gets down into the specific tasks instead of the generalities. So instead of saying, hey, this is the pre-qual part of the loan, it's saying, hey, this is the run credit part of the loan. This is the, ERLA. This is the 1003 part of the loan. It's going to step you through each of those a little bit more procedurally. Another thing that we have talked about internally is your organized workflows can improve your compliance outcomes. So if you are approached from a third party, whether it be an audit or anything like that, if you ever run into any kind of compliance issues, if you have a more organized workflow, especially one that is streamlined, like through Encompass Web, it's a lot easier to explain the outcomes that happen for your organization as well. So task pipeline. So this is kind of more talking about the generalities of workflow tasks. This kind of looks like what some people use dashboards for today. So think of it more of a task pipeline is a instead of saying, hey, here are the loans that are in my pipeline. We have Jones and Smith and, Watson and whatever else. Instead, this is saying, hey, I need to take care of this, this, and this, and this. And it's kind of agnostic as to which borrower is there. You can still see which borrower is being focused on, but the tasks are kind of paramount. It lets you focus on loan level tasks rather than your broad pipeline. And it's just another way for departments to streamline and stay focused. Workflow tasks. They're more targeted at job role than the milestone itself. This is also where automations come in. So you could have it to where whenever you do these tasks in order, it updates, could be conditions. It could be other parts of the loan. Triggers do this largely in Encompass Client now, but it's the ability to interact with things like enhanced conditions and service automations and things like that. The way the dominoes are kind of set up and knocked down are a little different in workflow tasks, and there are a lot more interesting things you can do with them. Workflow tasks accelerate your task completion. It lets everybody have more visibility and organization. Again, you kind of just see like a panel of cards of different things that need to be done. Yeah. We've already talked a little bit about notifications and email automation. Again, that works a lot better through Encompass Web. It's definitely something that we can set up through Encompass Client as well, but it's done through Encompass Web. The scheduler capabilities. So even though we mainly talked about automated emails through that, the scheduler capabilities can do other things as well. So you can set up a scheduler that will eventually run a service, for example. So let's say that you wanted to send out a notification or some kind of a disclosure that happens at a latter date that keeps getting missed. That's something that you could set a scheduler for and allow it to fire later. Conditions are a lot more robust. We've had enhanced conditions in Encompass for a long while now, but enhanced conditions were ultimately designed to work in tandem with these workflow tasks. So a lot of the things that you could automate for like automated service pulls or emails, notifications, you could also make happen with conditions. So you could say, hey, here's this condition. When this condition is added, set a scheduler to, expect a response. If you don't get a response, send an email update or something like that. Speaking of service automations, you can do that with MI, initial disclosures, pretty much any kind of service that you run through Encompass. If it has an Encompass Web version, then you can create some kind of an automation for that service. One of the biggest things to keep in mind whenever you're automating services is services require minimum data to be able to run. So like you're not going to be able to run credit if you don't have what's necessary for credit, like your social security number, things like that. So service automations are great, but they do require prerequisite data in almost all cases. That's why workflow is paramount. So if you are kind of all over the place as far as data entry in the pre-qual stages, if it's not procedural through something like workflow cards, it's easy to, you don't want your services to run automatically when they're just going to fail because they don't have the prerequisite data, right? So think of whenever you're designing these workflow scenarios, try to think of it as a way that, hey, the goal is to put the prerequisite data in at a certain stage with the anticipation of when all of those data points are set, the service will be set up for success and can run like you'd expect it to run. And then at that point, you get the additional efficiency of not only having people step through all those things procedurally in a very concise way. It also sets up the automated services for success, and it's one less step that your users have to worry about. It just shows up. Some of the benefits of automation, obviously, reduce system complexity. It's on the front end, programming it all is a little tight, but at the end of the day, if you don't have to worry about someone manually running a service, you don't have to have them remembering that. You don't have to have them actually doing it. It simplifies the system, and it obviously gives you a tremendous amount of efficiency. So, in conclusion, Encompass Web is great. It's still not for everybody. A lot of people are still going to work in Encompass Client. That's why I would suggest something like hybridization for a lot of people to start out. All that means is that, maybe your sales team, maybe your processing, maybe even your underwriting are going to start trying to create these workflow systems, whether it be opportunities, whether that be workflow tasks that are set up in an intuitive way for that production team. And then you're closing, post-closing, all that is still done in an Encompass Client. It might just be your sales team. It might literally just be your LOs that are utilizing Encompass Web. That's for many years, whenever they were rolling Encompass Web out, it was called LO Connect for a reason. It's because it was, primarily originally designed to benefit that sales team. So that's a good way to start out, is to just get them going and just create the systems they are interested in. And then and also the benefits of hybridization from that is your LOs and your sales team can focus on that design, getting that up and going. Whenever they're up and running and liking it, then you can start moving to your processing team, then your underwriting team, and to where everybody is eventually on Encompass Web. The challenges of Encompass Web, obviously, pretty immense. There's a lot of things that need to be ported over. When a lot of people ask me, hey, what are the biggest hurdles? I've told them in the past that if you have a lot of custom input forms, that is something that is a big deal, because the cost of moving a lot of those over to Encompass Web is expensive, because translating that to Encompass Web is a lot. But what I've found is ultimately Encompass Web is designed in a way that those custom input forms are no longer needed. So what a lot of those custom input forms were trying to do is ultimately what Encompass Web does through things like opportunities and workflow tasks and the card system and how it works. It gives you that intuitive flow and like checklist that it gives you a sandbox mode for your LOs and a quick and concise, focused workflow that allows them to get new borrowers in quickly and disclosed without much effort. And it allows processors more organization through those workflow tasks. It allows them to work off a task list instead of having to guess and hem and haw as to which loan needs what next. It gives underwriting a ton of options regarding enhanced conditions and the ability for those to just pop in. You can have a system to where when the underwriter starts, instead of them having to review it, there could be automations that add enhanced conditions that already get them ahead. It's almost to where it's pre-underwritten. Again, there are so many benefits to Encompass Web. I would definitely suggest at least exploring it a little bit. And if you all need help, obviously we're here to help. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out, info@thecommonwealth. Martin, Cody, any of our sales team, they can obviously be there for you if you need that. And hopefully we'll all eventually be on Encompass Web together. So we can all start utilizing these systems that are doing really, really phenomenal things, but it seems like almost nobody's using them. So maybe this is the year. I'm hoping. And that's all I got.
Leslie, that was awesome. You ended at 11:30, right on the dot as well. So that was very impressive. That doesn't happen very often. But I'm going to drop my contact information into the chat here for anybody. I didn't see any questions come through, but if there are any of the topics that we discussed today that anybody wants to dive into a little bit more, we'd love to have a conversation with you. I'd be happy to facilitate a meeting time in between you and Wesley and the team there so we can unpack anything further. We can do screen shares if you're in Compass, or if you're already working with us, then just you already have our contact information. We'd be happy to dive into any of the topics that we've discussed today as well. But we appreciate everybody's time. Thanks for joining us. I'll be sending out the slideshow and a recording of this webinar too. So if you want to kind of go back and review anything, you're welcome to do that at your own time. And like I said, please reach out with any questions. We'd love to chat with you. But thanks again, Wesley. That was awesome.
No problem.
All right, everybody. You have a wonderful rest of your week, and July 4th is coming up. So hope everybody has a nice long weekend next week.